What's up, grinders? So my wife recently said to me, and this is not the first time she said this, mind you, that I have the magical capability to turn any discussion towards either Esperanto or languages in general. It doesn't matter what the discussion entails. We could be discussing the current conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and I'll be sitting here talking about how this is impacting on the Esperanto movement in that region of the world. We could be talking about her best friend having a baby, and guess what? I'll be making plans to teach her Esperanto. Hell, we could be sitting at a restaurant and she'll ask me what I want from the menu, and I'll start telling her the etymology of each of these words that I'm seeing there. So as you can imagine, I have quite a fascination in languages, and it has now gone beyond her and has gone towards other people. People have started asking me about languages in the most random of ways, and even when they don't ask me about languages, I will start somehow turning it towards languages, such as this lovely comment right here. Because, you know what, there is a way to actually learn languages while you're doing this. Or I've also had people say, you know what, why don't you try and review other videos rather than just languages? But I'm pretty sure I would probably turn those into languages in some way. And to prove the point that anything can be a lesson in language learning, let's watch a video. So as you can see, there's a video here on my feed. It's called Climb Around a Table. Now, I saw this video while I was out walking and I thought, I really want to watch it, but I think there's a lesson to be had here. So let's watch it together and see what we can learn.
When you finish using the table for its traditional purpose,
now, obviously, the traditional use for a table is simply that of a language learning space. So you're going to set up your laptop, you're going to have some content ready to go. Let's go with like a 30-minute video or something like that. And then as you watch this video, what your purpose here is, yes, to understand, absorb the language, immerse within it. However, also to try spot those things that maybe you want to actually start learning. Maybe some word you've heard pop up once or twice. If it pops up once or twice, it's probably quite relevant to the content. And if you don't know the specific word, what you can then do, assuming you've got a nice setup, is you have a notepad there, you jot down the word. Now, if you hear it a couple of more times, just put like a little, slash next to it type of thing. Start ticking up how many times you've heard it. And if you've heard it 6 times, that means you've got 6 sentences where that word has existed, 6 contexts. You can then actually take those, create audio cards, and load them into Anki.
Here's a fun activity you can try. Level 1. Climbing around the table with waves.
Okay, now there's actually a couple of things you could do in this scenario, not just to exercise, obviously, your core strength and upper body strength here. So you can see that he's reaching around the table. Now, rather than just climbing around the table pointlessly, what you could also do is start describing your various positions. Because think about it, he's got his hand up here on the top of the table. So let's say you wanted to practice Esperanto, you could like sit there and be like, mia mano estas sur la supro della tablo. Something like that. And then you could say, mia capo estas sub la tablo. And a really good thing here is with Esperanto specifically, as you're lowering your head, you can actually use the accusative of direction. So this is a really good way of like actually practicing saying things as you're performing the movement. Now, you might think this is a little bit crazy as well. Like, for example, he's just hanging here under the table. But I've actually, previously in the past, when I was at the gym, I found like a really cool kind of method to practice a language while you're actually working out. So what you can do is, let's say you have a bunch of words that you want to work on, but you're not that great with them type of thing. As you're doing your sets, let's say you're like lifting weights, okay? So maybe you're doing a pull down bar. Let's do a pull down bar. That's nice and easy. As each time you pull it down, just say a sentence, okay? And then release it and then pull it down. And you might think this is kind of like a stupid thing to do. However, it's been proven that as you actually exert and do exercise, at least I remember reading this somewhere in the literature, that while you're physically doing these types of like active exercises, your brain is obviously very awake because it's got to control your body. And therefore, you're going to put some focus on actually these words, and it can actually help you a little bit. And I found it did, although I don't go to the gym anymore because it's just too damn expensive. Although I should set up a home gym because I am getting a little bit fat. Now, besides that, there's actual proof as well that if you go for a walk and you do your study, so for example, you walk and you listen to a podcast, or you even do your Anki as you're walking, just the fact that you're actively moving, like you're walking, that will also help you with your language learning. I can't remember the specifics around it, although I do remember reading an article that the human brain generally is just slightly more like active and attentive while you're moving, and it's probably something historical due to the fact that we would have to actively go out, hunt, or look for food, forage. Okay, now we can see that this guy here is hanging under the table, okay? So here's actually another thing you could do. So this is something I've done a little bit in the past with Esperanto, but I didn't really like it, although some people absolutely love this, is you can label things. So imagine here, you're under the table. You could start labeling the most random things, and then when you're in that stressful position of literally hanging under the table, you start repeating these words, okay? Because let's say there's a nail there, you could literally have the word for nail next to it, and then just try and describe like a situation you would be in. And trust me, you're going to really focus on this because you're going to make a promise to yourself beforehand that you will not move forward until you get one fully formed, nice sentence out. You're going to focus on that sentence because you're not going to want to be hanging for too long. Again, now he's wrapping his leg around the table. Just describe your actual actions. So you could say something like, Nun mi volas meti mian piedon sur la supron de la tablo. Tamen anue mi devas movi min dextren or maldextren, depending on your actual position. You actually will be describing your physical movements, and the fact that you are both actively doing this movement as you're also saying these words will help a lot. Oh, he almost stacked it right there. So here's another thing you can do. As you're actually pulling up, you can see that there's a wall behind him. You could label that wall with random words. You could have a word on that curtain right there. And you could say something like, La curteno estas antaŭ mi. So you'd start repeating the locations of things in physical space. And this will also take your mind off a little bit of the physical exercise that you're doing right now, which I assume is very stressful. Now, we also watched a video recently in which was mentioned the gap effect, something that I haven't tested out yet. I'm hoping to test it more, but this would be a great scenario to use it because you're going to take a break while you're on top of that table. So instead of continuing your language practice, take a break, let your brain actually rest. Trust me, it's going to be having a lot of these words still flowing through it as you're sitting there because you were just in a super stressful position under there. And this is something else. You've probably heard these stories before, and I've actually heard this, and I've kind of experienced it in some ways, that when you're in a very super stressful situation and you need to use the language, when you do finally use it, it's going to stick so much more, especially if you make mistakes and stuff. Here, you don't want to make a mistake. You're going to fall and hurt yourself on the floor. But if you're in a stressful situation, the words will stick more.
Level 2. Climbing around the table lengthways.
Like everything he just said there, climbing around the table lengthways. You could literally say that in your target language. And this could be like the secondary review set. Now, obviously, you don't want to be using a table every day because you're going to be using the same phrases and stuff. So probably try and mix it up. Maybe even try with different tables, different colors, chairs, all sorts of stuff. Yeah, he's really struggling right now. See, this would probably be a great time to be actually practicing vocab and sentences just to take your mind off the physical strain you're under. This reminds me of when I was actually in the military, and they would drill commands into you while you're on an obstacle course so that you would just automatically react. And when you got so exhausted, funnily enough, you actually became more receptive to the commands. It just kind of became automated because you're starting to phase out and you're just I'm just going to let these commands go. So maybe you could actually have something playing at this point, actually a speaker or something playing out sentences, because by this point you're going to be exhausted. You're not going to be thinking about your own phrases and stuff. So as you're just hearing it, just repeat it as you're performing these actions. One thing you definitely want to do is make sure you guys have got a sturdy table. I'm not sure this table would be able to take too many sessions of this. I feel like he's doing this last action in probably the most difficult way possible. Look at that movement. That's another thing. You could try to describe your actual posture. And the funny thing is, you would think describing your posture and the position of your limbs and how they're contorted and stuff would be something very easy to do in a language. But in fact, it's it's actually a very advanced thing. I actually found when I was teaching a student out of China, their parent wanted me to focus on, like actual body movements and stuff like that. And at first I thought it was a little bit strange, but apparently the kid was having troubles, in sports and stuff with like using English while he was over in China. So I actually was helping him describe all the different like movements of the actual body in English. And there is actually so many different ways that we would describe the exact same action. So imagine you're in this situation, just trying to describe it, you're probably going to find so many holes in your capabilities. Like even some of these movements right now, if I were to try and describe them in Esperanto, I might struggle a bit. Like I'd have to think about it. Yeah, he definitely took the hardest route around this table. Oh, he's about to fail here. Come on, man. Don't let us down. Okay, so, well, we're pretty much at the end of the lesson. We've learnt everything we can from this guy. So, overall, I guess the table method of language learning in which you like inflict a large amount of suffering and pain upon yourself could be a good method because you will be in a very stressful situation. And by being in a stressful situation, you're going to basically connect these words and these ideas together in your brain a lot more because there is science to back up the fact that when you're under like a very high level of stress, you will basically burn those memories into your brain. So if you're like super committed to the table method, you'd probably make some really good progress. And also you'd probably get very good at describing the most strange contorted positions you could be in. It wouldn't be very good for like vocab pickup because like there's not so many things you could describe here, but for actual movements, like the use of verbs and then like the description of your physical posture, it'd be a very good method. So if you guys have liked this video, let me know in the comments below and I'll see you all in the next video. And if you're not there, you better be at home performing the table method.